Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on this bracelet. And this bracelet uses some of the beads from Eureka Crystal Beads Featherlight Dance collection, which I believe is sold out. However, you can purchase all the beads separately. They're on the website. I'll put a link down below for you. And so here's the back. We have a lot going on in the back. Here's the front. Really pretty. I just love these colors. They're so beautiful, but you can check your stash as well and see what you have. I use these beads all the time, so they're pretty standard beads, so you might even have them in your stash. All right, so let's get a materials list going and get started on materials list going. So you're going to need some 15-0 seed beads. Now here, this is the one that's in the collection. I used a 15-0 from my stash because I didn't think this would show up, but you know, it probably will show up. So you can use the 15-0 from your stash or one from the collection. Everything else I use is from the collection. 11-0, Delica, bugle bead, 3mm fire polish. The jump rings are from my stash. A mini gem duo, you've got 4mm bicones. I'm using, you need the chatons. Of course, I use them also. You'll need at least 6 of the chatons, I believe, unless you have this really small wrist. You need a toggle clasp. Here's the one from the collection. I'm using Fireline 6-pound thermally fused tough in smoke, and I have a little pin cushion, you know, with all different size needles. I think I used a size 11 beading needle for the entire project. All right, so I'll list everything in the description box below the video, sizes, shapes, colors. Everything to purchase will be down there. I'll put a link, of course, to Eureka Crystal Beads website and the page where you can find all the beads for this, from the collection. All right, so let's get started. Okay, let's get started. So thread your needle with a little over 3 feet of thread, put on a stop bead, and leave enough of a tail to sew in. So I picked up and dropped down to my stop bead 2 11-0s and a mini gem duo, and I did that 4 times. Okay, we're going to sew these into a circle by sewing through the first beads after my stop bead. So just sew through the 11-0s and this mini gem duo, and then you're just going to sew all the way around to reinforce. Okay, so I've reinforced all the way around, and I came past the stop bead a little bit, by a few beads, and I'm exiting the bottom hole of a mini gem duo. So I'm just going to sew through the top hole of the one I'm exiting. So just like that. So we're exiting the top hole of this mini. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a 3mm fire polish on an 11-0. I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next mini gem duo. Like that. Do that again. 11-0. 3mm fire polish and an 11-0. I'm going to sew through the next top hole of the next mini gem duo. So you're going to do that 2 more times. Down to my last 11-0 fire polish 11-0. Exiting here, I'm going to sew through this one. So the next top hole of the next mini, and then you want to reinforce this all the way around. So I've reinforced all the way around, and I'm exiting the top hole of a mini gem duo. So just like that, I'm just going to flip my piece around because we're going to make the bezel here. So I want it to be, the stone to sit where the flat mini gem duos are. So here we go. I've just flipped it around, and I'm exiting the top hole of a mini gem duo. Okay, I'm going to pick up 5 15-0s, and it's going to start to curve. So I want it to curve in this way, like that, to make a little cup. So 5 15-0s, exiting the top hole of this mini. I'm going to sew through the top hole of this mini. And you want to make sure those 15-0s sit in front of the fire polish, like so. Do that again. 5 15-0s, exiting the top hole of this mini. I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next one. Oops. So now I have 2 groups of 5 15-0s on. At this point, you can pop your stone in if you like, or you can, do another 5. And then eventually you're going to put your stone in and put your last group of 5 15-0s on. So here I've put my stone in. Here are my next group of 5 15-0s. Like so. And the stone is not going to stay. It's just We're just laying it in there for placement. And then one more time, 5/15 through the next top hole of the next mini gem duo, making sure those pop in front. Oops. So this is what it looks like. Now you're exiting the mini gem duo, you're just going to advance through those first 5/15 you put on. So just like that. Next up, I'm going to pick up a delica and I'm going to sew through. I'm exiting the 5/15. I'm just going to sew through the next group of 5/15. Like that. I'm going to pull that, whoops, I'm going to pull that tight. So there we go. So we've got a delica in between the 15s. Do that again, delica through the next 5/15. Just hold it with your thumb, pull it, give it a nice tight pull. So you can do that 2 more times. And then you're going to reinforce this really well all the way around. Okay, so I've sewn all the way around, and I actually went through a couple times, and I'm exiting, the group of 5/15. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hop over to the top hole of the mini gem duo through that next 11/0, through the next fire polish and the next 11/0. So this is where you'll be exiting. Just like that. Okay, let's move on. So we're exiting this 11/0 here. I'm going to pick up, or I've picked up a mini gem duo, 11/0 mini gem duo, and I'm going to sew through the 11/0 on the other side of that mini right here, the fire polish, and the next 11/0. So just like that. Just going to place those on, like so. Okay, I'm going to do that again. So I'm exiting this 11/0. I'm going to pick up my mini gem duo, my 11/0 mini gem duo. I'm going to sew through the 11/0 fire polish and the next 11/0. So just like that. We have 2 groups on, so you're just going to repeat that 2 more times. Okay, last group of mini gem duo, 11/0 mini gem duo, exiting this 11/0 right here. I'm going to sew through this 11/0, the fire polish, and the 11/0. Just like so. Okay, this is what we have so far. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to work on the back a little bit. So I'm exiting this group here, the 11/0 fire polish 11/0. I'm going to sew through the top hole of this mini gem duo, this one right here, through this 11/0 and the next fire polish. So we're not changing the thread path, we're just moving through. So you'll be exiting this fire polish bead right here. I'm going to pick up an 11/0, a bugle bead and 11/0. Exiting this fire polish, I'm going to hop over to this one, sew through that one. Just going to place those on right there. Do it again. 11/0, bugle bead 11/0. Exiting right here. I'm going to sew through this one. So the next fire polish in line. So now I have 2 of those groups with the bugle beads on. I'm going to do that 2 more times. One here and one here. Your last 11/0, bugle bead 11/0, through this fire polish right here. Now they get 4 groups on, and I'm going to advance my needle right through that 11/0, bugle bead 11/0. Next in line, right there. So you'll be exiting the 11/0 after the bugle bead. I'm going to pick up 3 11/0s, exiting the bugle bead group here. So this 11/0, I'm going to sew through the next 11/0, bugle bead 11/0. Just going to do that all the way around. I'm going to pick up an 11/0, 3 11/0s, exiting this 11/0. I'm going to sew through the next 11/0, bugle bead 11/0. Okay, do that 2 more times. Last 3 11-0s, exiting this one 11-0, I'm going to sew through the next 11-0 bugle bead and the 11-0 after the bugle bead. That's what we have so far. I'm going to turn these 11-0s into like a little picot. So we're exiting this 11-0 right here. Let me see if I can pull in a touch more. I'm going to sew through the next 11-0, so just the next one, like that. And this center one right here, I'm going to skip. So I'm not going to sew through that one. I'm going to sew through the next 2 11-0s, bugle bead, and the bugle bead. And if you can get it, the next 2 11-0s, but if you can't, just go through those first 2 11-0s on the bugle bead, and you can give it a little pull, and you see how it pops that middle bead up, and we want that to be nice and snug because that's going to be a connection bead. Let's move on. Exiting the bugle bead, I'm going to sew through the next 2 11-0s. Let's do the same thing here. I'm going to skip this center bead here and sew through the next 2 11-0s and the bugle bead. I think that's probably the easiest way to start it here. So see how that just popped that bead right up? So exiting the bugle, I'm going to sew through the next 2 11-0s. I'm going to skip the middle. I'm going to sew through the next 2 11-0s and the bugle. Giving that a pull, and if it doesn't pop up itself, you can kind of encourage it with your needle, like that. So you can just do that all the way around. Okay, so I'm doing this picot right here, so I've come through these 2 11-0s, skipping this one, sewing through the next 2 and the bugle. Just make sure you have them all those center beads popping up. So, and then you're just going to advance through. So you're exiting the bugle, advance through the next 2 11-0s, and then the top bead, that middle bead, that picot bead, I'm calling it. So you want to be exiting one of the point beads here. Doesn't matter which one, as long as it's the point bead. Let's continue. So we're exiting that point bead there. We're going to pick up 2 11-0s. And we're going to sew through from this point, this bead here, we're exiting to this one. So to this mini gem duo right there. Then I'm going to pick up a bicone and I'm going to sew through the next mini gem duo. I'm going to pick up 2 11-0s, exiting here. I'm going to sew through the point bead of the next group, right there. And then 2 11-0s through the top hole of the next mini gem duo. Okay, so this is a sequence they're going to repeat around now. We're going to pick up the 4mm bicone. I'm going to sew through the next mini. I'm going to pick up 2 11-0s and I'm going to sew through the point. That point bead or the picot bead. 2 11-0s through the next mini, and then you're just going to repeat again. You're going to pick up your 4mm bicone, sew through the next mini, 2 11-0s through the picot bead, little point bead, 2 11-0s through the next mini. You got it. So you're just going to repeat that. Well, let's go ahead and just do it. We'll do the bicone and you will finish it off. 2 11-0s through the point bead, which is right there, so we're back to where we started from. Just like so. And now you're done with the unit. This is what it looks like on the front. Here's the back. And at this point you can just go around and sew this thread in. So I would sew through these 2 and then I'd come around and just put some half hitch knots in, and you can clip off this thread, or if you have thread left over you can just, do all your reinforcing, exit where you are right here, exit again through the 11 group of 11 O's here, right here, so that when we turn it over on the front, you can use this as your connection thread to your next unit. But that's up to you. I always recommend clipping off your thread, sewing in, tying some knots and clipping off your thread when you do components, and each put one, attach them separately. That way, if something happens, let's say your bracelet gets caught on something and it breaks, you have all these completed components and all you have to do is connect them again. So up to you. So do as many units as you need. I have a whole bunch here. I think I'm going to need 7. So I have 6 done. So I think I'm going to make 1 more. And then I'll show you how to attach them. Okay, let's sew 2 units together. So you'll be exiting, that interior group of 11 O's right up here. We're just going to sew through the same beads on the other unit. So down these, like so. I just need to get down the other 2. Right here, and then we're going back through this group and right out through the 11 O we started, where we started. Now you've got the center put together. Now we're exiting this 11 O here. We're going to sew through this mini gem duo right here. I'm going to pick up an 11 O and I'm going to sew through this one on the other side, just making it connect a little bit better. I'm going to sew down through this group right here until I exit this 11 O. So we're down at the bottom now. Exiting this 11 out, I'm going to sew through this mini. I'm going to pick up an 11 out. I'm going to sew through this mini to connect this side, and then I'm going to work my way back up again. Worked my way through all the seed beads again, through the mini gem duo. Now what you can do here is you can sew through this bicone right here, and you could work your way around to put a thread here to attach more, or I would just sew this thread in at this point because your thread's getting soft after using it a lot, and I think it's a good idea to sew it in. So just go around and put some half hitch knots in and sew your thread and clip this off, and then you'll just add another unit on. So I've got all my units done, and you'll notice this one's a darker chaton because I ran out of chaton. So make sure that you have enough of your chatons. However, I was thinking that when we do the ending, this is what the ending's going to look like. If let's say you didn't want to add, let's say you just had 6 because you have the collection. What if you just add maybe 3 of these little units on? 1, 2, 3, just connect them as an extender. So I think there are other ways that you can finish this other than adding another chaton. Like I said, if you have the collection and you don't want to use it. All right, so let's add the clasp. I've threaded my needle with just a little bit of thread. Put a foot and a half, put a stop bead on, left a tail to sew in. So I've just sewn up through the 5 seed beads here, and I'm going to add 7. So I'm exiting here, and I've added 7 seed beads of the 11 O's. I'm going to go back through these 3, and then these 2, just like that. Let's get super close. So I'm exiting, this group of 5. I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to sew through the next 2. It's going to make that pop. I'm going to skip the next one, sew through the next 2. And you want to help that. I want those to pop, that middle one to pop over. Just give it a pull, like that. Then I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to go through the last two, and then that middle one as well. I just want that to pop, so let's pop that over. So this is what it looks like. So that's how the end's going to look, and then you just want to continue through these two, and you want to reinforce a little bit. So that's what the end looks like. And like I said, what if you just keep adding these units? So you just count the number of beads, and you skip one, skip two, skip one, so to the next two, and just kind of repeat that. You can repeat that 2 or 3 times, and that will give you an extension. All right, so get that done. You can reinforce this and then come back and we'll finish it. So what I did is I just put a jump ring on the end of my clasp. See that? And then I just put the jump ring right through that little unit that we made. So you see that? That's how it looks. Here it is. And on the other, on the toggle bar, I put 3 jump rings on, because you want to be able to get it through the top, through the loop. So you need a little bit of space. So that's how I put that end on, just with a jump ring. So just like that. I'm going to put it on my wrist, but I'm going to go off camera to do that because it's impossible for me to do it while I'm filming. It's so pretty. Here it is clasped. Took me 7 units to get my about 6 3/4, 7 inch bracelet. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.